Okay, so that says that we're recording. I'm just going to check that we've got a sound going through. That's good. Can you briefly tell me what you had for lunch, Peter?
Actually, I had avocado with a little roast chicken that I'd prepared
Ooh,
earlier, but
on
I'm
toast?
no, I didn't have toast, but I have also spent all afternoon because I've got some people coming for dinner, and I'm making an ottolenghi warm
Ooh,
salad of
mm,
Brussels sprouts with a herb salad, and then I'm
mm.
making a herb salad with toom, which is an incredibly 100 grams of garlic and yogurt all combined together.
Good. Can I
And
come
then
round for
I'm
dinner?
and then no, and then I'm and then I'm making. I think I've given it to you before, actually. Tandoori confit of chickpeas, which is also by um, Ottolenghi.
Right, and I'm inviting on your behalf everyone who's watching us on the Hoon to
Yeah,
come round
yeah,
to your place
yeah,
for dinner.
exactly. All right, good.
Okay, five, four, three, two. Well, kia ora koutou katoa, everyone, and welcome to the Hoon on Friday, the 25th of August. I'm Bernard Hickey here in Auckland with co-host Peter Bale. Peter, how are you?
Uh, Good. I'm in Hoon Bay, Bernard, and I was scootering along today on a rented scooter since my actual scooter got stolen today outside Auckland University, which really pissed me off actually. And I saw Christopher Luxon doing a stand-up, and I thought
Mm.
felt like I don't know. I for some reason I felt like being rude to him, which is not like me. But I don't know. He just it just the smugometer went off the scale, and I just wasn't sure about it. But I noticed during the week, Bernard, that your assertion last week, your focus group of one driving up from Wellington to Auckland, that there was a hell of a lot of national um, banners everywhere, is not only true, but it seems to have been validated by this idea that National's got a lot of money coming in.
Yes, it turns out for every $1 that is raised by Labor, National has been raising seven and a half
Mm,
dollars.
mm.
And we got to the point earlier this week where Labor, obviously a little bit short of funds, had to call on the big gun and got Helen Clark to make a personal
Good Lord.
appeal to say, I'm investing this amount of
Mm,
money and I'd love it if you all invested the same amount. And that helped. But it is very clear
mm.
that Labor, although in government and in theory should be in a pole position, are clearly not in either the polls or in the money raising stakes, which is another way
Hmm.
of, sometimes in America, for example, that's how they judge how successful you are, by how much money you've
Yeah,
got.
yeah.
And certainly that's the case here. Um, and we're starting to get into election season. We'll talk about this later on, I
50
think, with
days, I realised today. Yeah.
and not just here, but overseas, the first Republican presidential
Mm.
candidate bun fight sans
Yeah, which
Donald
looks
Trump.
absolutely hideous. Did you see that only two of them put their hands up when, or didn't put their hands
Oh,
up when said that they would vote for him regardless of if he was convicted? I mean, it is. We're all in some kind of weird play.
and
It is.
and of course they were asked once, did they believe in climate change, and all of them said no, and one of them said it was a hoax.
Yeah, yeah. Which is the leader who came out. Vivek, what's his name, Ramaswamy,
Mm,
came out
mm,
really, really powerfully. He was pressing all the Trump buttons, and
mm.
it is pretty extraordinary the lengths that you have to go to demonstrate your fealty to this person. But have you seen the mugshot today? The
The
mug,
mug.
the Trump
Oh,
mugshot.
I saw a reaction to it. So I saw it go up on a big screen in
Yeah.
front of a bunch of people who are obviously not Trump fans,
Mm.
who all cheered like, "Oh, finally, I've seen the guy in a mugshot.
Yeah,
Great!"
he's wearing his hair looks like I don't know whether you remember when we were kids, Bernard, that you could buy a plastic Beatles wig that made you look like one of the Beatles if you were a little child, kid, a young boy, and he looks like he's wearing a plastic, Donald Trump wig, and he's doing. Do you remember the film Zoolander with Ben Stiller
Ah,
and the
Blue
and
Steel. Yeah.
Blue Steel? He's doing Blue Steel.
Orange Steel. Is that what
Yeah,
it
or
is this
Orange
time?
Steel, exactly. He's doing Orange Steel. It is just extraordinary. But
Yeah.
so Bernard, what are we going to talk about today? We're going to do Prigozhin.
Oh
His
yeah.
fall from the sky, if not his fall from grace.
Grace, but yes.
Yeah.
Not even being in the aisle seat saved him. Staying away from windows was his plan, but that couldn't save him.
So we'll talk quite a lot about that, I think, because the cynicism that's on display today by Putin is quite, it is award-winning crocodile tears.
And you got to be not too sad about either of them, really. But it is a thing, and now there's a whole bunch of things that might happen.
Yeah.
We'll talk about that with Robert, which
And
is
we're going
fun.
to talk about New Zealand. What do you want to talk about with New Zealand politics?
Well, we're going to have Josie on at the end talking about polarization and this change in tone this week, I think, particularly on Tuesday, towards going negative, going hard against the other party, not really talking about what you're going to do to make lives better, but just how bad the other guy is, and also just talking a bit more about the Kaka project, a fancy name for us doing a bit more solutions journalism ahead of the election.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Well, we should get my friend from Australia back on again to test how well you've done. Speaking of solutions journalism, we have the solution to climate change worrying right there. Catherine.
Yeah, Catherine, it's lovely to have you on, Catherine. We've been having such good chats. I keep thinking we should bottle them and put them up as videos
Absolutely.
where we educate each other on all sorts of things, including the climate, and actually starting to ask our audience. We did something accidentally interesting this week on Tuesday after one of our chats. In fact, during one of our chats.
Why accidentally?
Well, here's the story here. Catherine and I were having a chat about, what we should cover this week, and we got to talking about the latest climate news and how bad it looked, and I mused, if this was the beginning of Second World War, all sorts of amazing things would happen immediately and fast, and we wouldn't even think twice. At the beginning of the Second World War, all sorts of things were banned. There was rationing put in. Companies were stopped from building consumer devices and made to build planes and bombs. All sorts of things happened real fast because there was a near and present danger to our existence.
Oh, have you been to see Oppenheimer then?
No. It sounds like it's good. I listened to a podcast.
I mean, I think that's what you're talking about, and I could see you writing quite a good column about this. If you made the Manhattan Project into the Weather Project or the Climate Project.
Yeah. Well, actually, let's talk about that, Catherine. In our question to our audience, we asked, "What would you do if it was a real climate emergency? If it was like the beginning of the war and you wanted to do something?" What are the sorts of things that we could do? Because you've been thinking about this for a while.
Yeah. Well, I've got a top 5 list, and I also specifically have one of the respondents on that question to the Carcass subscribers said, if you're in New Zealand, the two main things you have to think about are cars and cows. So I've had to think about that one as well in terms of what should we do about cars and cows. But my top 5, first one would be stop taxing work and start taxing consumption and accumulation.
Oh, interesting.
And so that would
be
moving from income tax to natural resource taxes and wealth taxes.
So flat income tax, but really high GST on absolutely everything.
I wouldn't do it as GST. I think a natural resource tax is how much resources, so that goes to companies in terms of how much natural resources you're using in your product, and you set the tax at the same rate that it costs to recycle those inputs into what you're making to increase recycling and also make companies responsible cradle to cradle for all of the waste that comes out of the stuff that they manufacture as well as the inputs. So that would be one. Second one would be reduce working hours. Everybody has less stuff but more time.
How does that work?
Well, you'd also be paying more for stuff because the resource tax would come through into the cost of stuff that you want to buy.
Yep.
Universal basic income and green jobs guarantee so that everybody has sufficient.
Yep.
I would also like to see more support for community energy projects and a leg up for low-income communities and iwi hapu into developing those community energy. And when it comes to cars and cows, on the cars front, I reckon we should ban private cars in cities and towns.
Jesus Christ.
Oh, so
Move to a subscription model, so
Yep.
you
Well,
can
Bernard's
still
up.
drive.
Bernard's right up to that. He does Mevo and the others.
Mevo,
Yep.
Yep, that's good.
Yep.
Yep.
So you subscribe to a car fleet service, which would probably be set up by some kind of private public partnership, and that fleet would have to be progressively electrified over time. To support that, you also buy 10,000 new electric buses and minivans to improve public transport and make that free.
Yeah.
And electrify rail between
Christ,
towns
this is
and
sounding
cities.
like a lot more than 5.
Yeah.
Well, I did my 5, now I've got my cars
Oh,
and
I
cows.
see.
And on cows, I'm going soft on this one. I think we actually need more support for farmers to transition out of high intensity animal agriculture. So I think farmers are busily getting backed into a corner at the moment, and I think some of them even have locked in syndrome, whereby they've got such high debt, more regulation, higher costs to internalise pollution streams. And I think their representative bodies are doing a really shit job for them, and that who they are representing is just big ag and not individual farmers. And I think individual farmers are actually being tossed into the moat, so that every time the government comes for them, big ag can go, oh, but look at the poor farmers.
Yeah,
that are
I was
drowning
wondering,
in the
may I
moat, you know?
to ask you a couple of questions about that, Catherine, or
Sure.
a couple of assertions dressed up as questions. One is, it seems to me, and I don't think this is what I was entirely aware of this in the last few years, but the extent to which New Zealand dairy exports are not in fact value added, that really are they're almost the milk without the water is what we're selling. That seems a reversal, and I think that Fonterra needs a really good conversation about that, about where the value added is coming from, because if you send New Zealand cream cheese, it's not going to be called Camembert, of course, but that's surely got to be worth more to ship to other places. And I was talking to a friend last night who's slightly younger than me. Bernard knows who I'm talking about, and I remembered the trolley buses. And I'm young enough to remember both I think they were probably Bedford trolley buses that used to go up Queen Street and around Karangahape Road. And
I can't believe you're that old. I can't believe you're that old, Peter.
No, and they had the Volvos. Then they had these really stylish Volvos, which Auckland and Wellington only had them until quite recently. And, don't get me started on trams. I'm going to sound like Sir Dovmar Robinson, but, it really, some of these, when I see one of those Chinese buses zooming along, particularly with the ridiculous "We Are Kinetic" branding on them from Auckland Transport, I just think, hang on a minute, didn't we used to have incredibly low cost electric buses going around, certainly around those internal routes? I don't mean that the new electric buses aren't a sensible idea, but we kind of had been down this route before, as it were.
Don't we still have some in Wellington?
Well, this is so. When I lived in Brooklyn, we did have a trolley bus.
Did we?
That went up the hill, and actually, it's only in the last 4 or 5 years it was taken down. And the logic being that it was cheaper to run the diesel buses, and they tended to break down less. But of course, the short-term problem is that you'll never get those trolley electric lines back up again. And they're one of the perfect solutions, because one of the real issues with electric buses and electric trucks is that you're continually having to stop to recharge them, which is what you don't have to do with trolley buses. So
yes, exactly.
So we'll do
trolley buses. Don't you remember, Bernard? The lovely chap, the bus driver would occasionally they would sort of pop off, and the bus driver would come back to the back of the bus and pull the ropes to allow the little contacts to check again. I see we've got Julie Timmins on saying ban all private airplane and helicopter flights. I can tell you that's not going to be possible not going to be popular with my neighbours who have a couple of helicopter pads. Jesus,
but
steady on.
There would be an awful lot of people around your area who'd be quite happy, because I'm not that far from Hoon Bay, so to speak, and I'm forever hearing helicopters going over in the middle of the night, and I'm sick and tired.
Oh no, but that's the police helicopter.
It is out my way.
That's the police helicopter. 3 o'clock and 9 o'clock. It's always there. Jesus, Bernard. Yeah.
So
I don't think even Ben Cook lands, who's one of my neighbours, a bit further along the beach, lands his rather stylish black Aerospatiale helicopter. I don't think or Airbus helicopter. I don't think even he lands it at the middle of the night.
no. So this is what we're doing. We're basically asking subscribers and ourselves, what could we do if we were really serious about doing it? Now, the other thing that happened this week, just briefly in the climate space, was the government did a couple of deals with councils to essentially subsidise some climate retreat, and it's all a bit ad hoc. Catherine, you've been looking at what should have been our more considered, organised, get ahead of the curve Climate Adaptation Act consultation, but has been kicked off into the Netherlands of
New Zealand politics. I like that idea. The Low Countries.
That's right.
The Low Countries of New Zealand. The low, soon to be inundated policy countries.
Yeah,
good idea.
The Neverland of after the election. I mean, what could we have done other than this ad hoc? Here's $1 billion, and let's hope that never happens again.
Well, I mean, you're talking about the expert working group report. So they had, quite a few very specific recommendations about how things should move ahead and who should get supported. And at the start of it, they kind of said, well, this isn't about protecting wealth. This is about protecting well-being and making sure that, everybody's taken care of and we do the right thing going forward. But there probably was quite a bit of protecting wealth in there in terms of, the government up for the cost of the full cost of relocating people in those areas of retreat. And the sense that I get from what has been the discussion document that has come out from the government to go into select committee is the sense of that maybe they can't afford it. So I'm not sure how fully costed out it is or where the money was going to come from. But there's the sense in that document where they're kind of saying, what should our priorities be amongst these things that the expert working group has recommended, and how should we, and also kind of quite a strong focus on what is the resilience building that we can do ahead of having to do that managed retreat.
Because in theory, if you spend a bit of money up front now to do the retreat before the next disaster, the cost of it will be much lower when the disaster happens. And if you assume that we're going to have faster climate change than what most people have thought about until now, and in particular that the IPCC, the whole UN climate establishment idea that we're going to keep warming below 2% and we're going to have 3% economic growth, and we're going to do that by some to be invented technology to suck carbon out of the air after 2030. If we think that's actually going to work, maybe we should have a backup plan for it when it doesn't, when we get to 4 degrees with it.
Bernard, you're breaking up in some kind of strange way. It's particularly when you get enthusiastic. There's something
Too
about
much arm waving.
There's too much arm waving and socialist bloody ranting going on there. But Catherine, what did you make, Catherine, of the just while Bernard's coming back on, what did you make of the agreement with between Auckland Council and the government for something like $2 billion to compensate people and do a certain amount of protection after the Gabrielle and other storms, the replacement of the homes and so on, and also you've got Tairāwhiti and Gisborne done. It was very interesting to hear Grant Robertson talking about the need that it just can't be ad hoc anymore. It's got to be much more of a sort of fundamental piece of planning.
Yeah, it absolutely can't be ad hoc, because you look at that and you go, for sure that if that keeps getting worse, and if councils are just going into higher and higher debt to pay their share of it, for sure that that's not sustainable. And I think everybody needs some kind of a clue as to, what we need to prepare for and what we can expect down the line if we can't expect to have that keep happening. I think the other thing as well is, if you don't own your own home and you don't have much prospect of it, particularly if you're in the younger generation, that you're going to spend your whole working life paying taxes in order to buy another house and another house and another house for people who built them in dumb places in the first place is kind of, that's going to chase them all out of the country, No,
that's such an. What do you make the other news that I was very struck by this week that taken to its nth degree would be absolutely harrowing, is this. And because it's got adorable little penguins in it, we're kind of nervous about it. But this mass deaths of penguins in Antarctica because of the thinning out of the ice sheet there. And then there was
a lot of shocking things going on.
Yeah,
in Antarctica
and there was a
statistic
there that if that particular part of the ice sheet were not to reform, it would lead to something like a 15-foot increase in sea levels worldwide.
Yeah, well, I know we talked about the AMOC a couple of weeks ago about what would happen if the ocean circulation system, and mostly in the northern hemisphere, but it crosses hemispheres. There was a piece of research out a couple of months ago saying that actually this around Antarctica and the southern hemisphere, there is an even stronger possibility of the ocean circulation system breaking down around mid-century.
Yes. And they're much less measured, right? I mean, the southern oceans is a kind of data-free zone.
It is massively under-researched, and I think all of the Antarctic researchers at the moment are going, hey, everybody, we need to urgently to get more funding and more research going on down here, because the impacts of some of these things are massive, and not just for those countries that are near to the Antarctica, but those impacts stretch across hemispheres and oceans and things. So I think the main thing that's jumping out to me at the moment is that we needed a whole lot more research going on down there in order to understand what's happening and whether we can do anything to stop it.
I'm back
Bernard.
on, I think. I hope you can all hear me.
We can, Bernard.
Fantastic.
I was worried there'd been some, instant increase in the sea level that had reclaimed Victoria Park and your house.
It could happen. We saw it in those floods over end of day, where literally the water was lapping up against the bottom step. So one day it'll happen. I'm really glad you guys had a chance to talk about that stuff with the floods. And
we did. We talked about our holidays, and we decided that I'm going to Europe twice a year, but I'm going to take a private jet rather than because it's apparently less carbon.
Did you see that article about the new freight ship that has sails?
Yes,
but
absolutely.
They're actually big aluminium sails.
Yeah. And they're modelled on the America's Cup sails mast. Yeah, no, it's a brilliant idea. And
hitch a ride on one of those.
The company. Well, you used to be able to go, particularly to the US from New Zealand, as I recall. David Morrigal, somebody who knows everything, will remind me. There used to be you could book berths on container ships. For they'd had two or three cabins for retired journalists.
We won't quite cope with the holiday
No.
business, but
Yeah. Well, Bernard and I are going to be on the Waiheke ferry quite a lot, which is almost the same as going overseas in a container ship. But Bernard, what's going to happen with Fuller's? Are you going to have an electric ferry soon, or are you going to have to do what I'm talking about, which is training up to be a Fuller's ferry captain?
Yes, I am just going to hit some echo cancellation there. Sorry about that.
Robert, you handsome devil.
Hi, how are you doing?
Very good to see you. Very good, thank you.
Good.
We're just having a couple of technical issues because Bernard's been banished from his normal office, and he's in his. Actually, he's not literally in the smallest room in the house, but it's close. It's a close thing. Is the echo on your side, Bernard, or Robert's? It only started when Robert.
Oh, when I came on.
I'll pop off.
Here we go. There's no echo.
Is it okay now?
Yes. But there's no echo from you, which is excellent.
Oh, good.
Not that it wouldn't be good to hear everything you said twice.
No. Good.
So, Robert, we've had some pretty good news, or interesting. Sorry. Good is the wrong word. We've had some flabbergasting news yesterday that we all expected, pretty much. that oh, sorry, Robert, you're the source of the echo.
I am the source of the echo.
Yeah.
Oh, dear.
Simon, how do we stop Robert echoing, as it were? Have you got an extra speaker there, Robert?
No, just the one. Just the headset and the microphone.
Okay.
And the speaker.
Right. All right. Well, why
Would
don't
you
I
like
tell
me
you
to
what?
disconnect
Why
and
don't
come back?
no? Why don't you just speak directly for about 5 minutes about the death of Prigozhin? And according to our producer, you might have your laptop speakers turned on. If you turn them off, because you don't want them on as well as your headphones.
Okay.
I'm reminded of Mark Galiotti's podcast where he says, always reassuringly underproduced.
Sorry. I may have to leave you for a minute and come back. Is that okay? Or is it?
Yep.
Well, we'd hate that. But yeah, sure.
I'll
Please,
try again.
you really need to turn off your... Just use your headphones. Thank you.
Thank you.
So, Bernard, Robert's going to go. You going to go?
Yes. I'll go.
God.
Because I'm getting the whole echo thing as well. Wow. I'm just wondering if I stop the whole recording, start a new session, send you links directly, and I think that might solve the problem. Because I think when I lost internet,
it does sound very spooky, Bernard.
Yeah.
I think we should do this on Halloween.
Yeah. So I'll be back.